Welcome to the new Rainmaker podcast, a weekly show for visionary founders and team members alike to come together and share the heartfelt, the cringe, and the radically honest truths about what it's really like to build and work for some of the world's most exposed brands on the biggest internet stages. I'm your host, Veronica Romney, and after working for some of the biggest names in the online space myself, I've learned that it takes both leadership and dream team collaboration to truly scale a company to its greatest potential. You can build a business alone, but you cannot scale it on your own. And my goal on today's episode and every episode is to inspire our dreamers and empower our leaders. Make sure to follow and share my podcast with your friends and colleagues, and feel free to tag me on Instagram at vromney with your insights and ahas. Now let's make it rain on today's episode. Okay, Rainmaker family, prepare your hearts. This is a very, very special podcast recording that I have attempted to do 2 to 3 times on my own and ended up deleting. So today is my Rainmaker story. I am both a visionary CEO and a proud marketing rainmaker, and I spent my entire career in the marketing lane, coming up from being an individual contributor to a director, a chief, and then now I'm training fellow marketing leaders. And I have wanted to tell my story from both angles. I wanted to tell my story from what it's been like for me being the rainmaker for some of the biggest brands in the world. And now, of course, being my own CEO of a scaling organization that trains and helps other people into, reaching their fullest potential. And I tried recording my story a couple different times, but it felt robotic and honestly just like a jazzed up LinkedIn profile, which nobody wants to listen to. And I did it when I was in Asheville, North Carolina, when I was actually touring the venue for our Making It Rain event. And I don't know why, but I had this idea. I'm like, I can't do this by myself. I'm too far into my own jar where I can't see my label through the jar. And then I don't know why, but I had this idea to have Alysha interview me and ask me all the questions that she's been dying to ask. Even though this is technically my podcast, I will not be the one doing the interviewing and asking the questions. In fact, I'm bringing to you a very special person, Miss Alysha, who is actually a marketing rainmaker inside of the Rainmaker Residency program and is the rainmaker for the Adrian Richardson, who is a force. So welcome to the podcast, Alysha.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very honored. I was so happy and excited when you asked me to do this. So I'm very, very honored to have this time with you and to get to ask you all these questions that have been on my mind for a while.
I thought so. I'm like, she's going to ask me hard questions. In fact, I voxed you yesterday and I was like, do you want to tell me the questions that you were thinking of? Or wait, maybe don't tell me. And that way you can authentically grab my answer. So we're going that route.
Yeah, this is raw and real.
I don't know what she's going to ask. I don't know if I'm going to cry, but here we go. I'm going to be able to tell my story through the lens of Alysha, and Alysha representing you guys, the listeners, which is basically anybody who is a team member for an aspiring CEO, who's a part of a work group and relationship and aspires to be the best leader they can be. That's who gets to interview me and ask me how I did it myself. So should we start?
Yeah.
Take the wheel. Alysha, take the wheel.
Thanks. So I'm an incredibly nosy person. When I meet people that I just vibe with, like, I want to know everything. I want to know your whole life story. I want to know how you got to where you did. I want to know the trials and the tribulations, the hard stuff, the good stuff. And so I think I just first want to know, because I know a little bit about you already. And from the day that I was introduced to you, I've literally just been in love with you and obsessed with you, because you just inspire me in a million and one ways. But I know that your family has their own company. And so I want to kind of take this back to your childhood a little bit, because I feel like something that makes me the most intrigued by you is work ethic. Like, I can just see the fire. I can just tell from the day that I met you that, like, you're like me. Like, you're a hustler. You like to work. You like to do shit and get it done. And so take me back a little bit to your childhood. I know your family had their own business. Did they have that when you were younger? And did you play a role in that business?
You're making me cry right out the gate. No. Thank you, number one, for all the sweet words. Words of affirmation are my love language. So immediately I'm like melting. And yeah, you're a badass too. So this is all the affection in the other direction. That rhymed. I'm so clever. Okay, so yeah, my parents. So my for those of you that don't know, and you probably couldn't tell by listening to my voice or even seeing me in person, I'm 100% Cuban, and my parents both born and raised in Cuba. My mom left when she was 18, my dad in his early 20s, and they started the business when I was a little, if I'm not mistaken, when I was a little girl. I'm the oldest of three, and I'm pretty sure that when my brother and sister entered the scene, my mom had to leave. She was working for the Boca Hotel Resort, which is like a five-star Waldorf Astoria resort, and she was in the
Mhm.
kitchen working for the private chef, kind of running his operations, ironically, right? And so my parents started this business, and just literally this year, 2022, they sold it after 33 years. I'm 35, so they definitely started after me. So yeah, they after 33 years of building this business and going through all of the stages of growth and not growth, sold it and are now living their dreams in a beach house in St. Augustine. It's the total American dream.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even be here or be the person that you like or gave all those nice compliments to without my parents. I look like my mother, but I'm my father on the inside for sure. And they are the hardest workers that you'll ever meet in your entire life. I mean, they had to. They came here with nothing.
Mhm.
And my first job when I was 15 years old was being in the office with them, and my mom fired me the first week. She fired my ace because she's like, "I need you to file all of this paperwork," because it was back when, like, we would print everything and kill trees, right? Before it was all
Mhm.
digital, and I looked at her, I'm like,
Mhm.
"That's boring. I don't wanna file paperwork." She's like, "Well, then you're fired." And then, like, a week later, it was in my humility, like, "Fine, I'll do whatever you want me to do." But it was my first job. It was my
Mhm.
first job at 15, and in fact, not only was it my first job at 15, but when that happened, we went from a state of extreme abundance because we had gone from residential air conditioning to commercial air conditioning. And so we had a ton of big contracts. So I remember that year, my dad got a brand new car, my mom got a brand new car. We went on 2 or 3 cruises for a week long. Like that's what I remember as a 15-year-old. And then right
Mhm.
after that, we found out that the partner that they had taken on for the first time to go corporate, or not corporate, to go into the commercial division, had ended up embezzling over 100 grand from them. So
Oh my
all that new stuff, all those cars and everything gone, sold. My mom was driving a crappy truck. We had to pull a huge second mortgage on the house to keep the company afloat.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
So that's what I mean, those are really some dark, dark days.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. What a hit. Like, ugh, just to be thriving and, like, living your best life and then to have that happen. But
Mhm. And that's when I was working with them as when I was 15, 16. Mhm.
so when if you can think back to around that age, if somebody had asked you then, like, "What do you wanna be when you grow up?" What was your answer then?
I have never deviated. I'm boring. So like once I'm a very decisive person. Again, I get that from my father who sounds like Ricky Ricardo. So like, and my mom, same way. Like they are committed. They got the grit and that valiant spirit to persevere through, and the determination and courage, right? All those things, all those attributes that I really hold in high esteem. I get that from them. And so I just have this belief that entrepreneurs birth other entrepreneurs. So like because I watched at their feet, I was like, their disciple in a way of what it is to run a business. I knew that I had an affinity for business,
Mhm.
but I was a math nerd in high school, shocker.
Mhm.
And so I thought I was going to be like a CPA. So like a form of business, I was going to go in CPA, and then I took accounting classes and I hated it. I'm like, this is fake math. So then I'm like, well, I still like math. I'll go into finance. But it wasn't until I had a marketing internship that I realized, oh no, marketing's still business. And I don't have to be stuck in a cubicle looking at spreadsheets all day
Yeah.
long, which was what I was doing in my finance internship. So I knew even then at that age that I was gonna go the business track. It just took me a hot second to figure out which lane in business.
Mhm.
I didn't know when the calling of entrepreneurship was going to hit me, but I had a gut feeling that it was like Moana style, like the ocean would call one day.
Yeah. And so from the time you were 15 up until when did you work for your parents?
A couple years, and then I got a job at Jamba Juice because that's what all the cool kids were doing. And then I actually graduated high school when I was 17. My birthday is August 28th, so I was always the youngest in class.
Mhm.
So I technically graduated at 17 and started college in the summer. I chose summer semester because I was so excited to go carve my place in the world, independent woman. And so I got to college when I was 17. Mm-hmm.
And did you go straight to university?
Yes. Yeah, I went to Brigham Young University, and because again, I'm a massive nerd, I graduated with 64 college credits. Basically took off a year of school because
Mm-hmm.
of all that credit. And so I only had like 1 year of kind of those requirements. And then I was already in my business program, which is a 2-year program.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So when did that moment happen? That entrepreneurship fire? Like, do you remember the moment where that lit?
I wish I could tell you in my feminism, like in my little feministic heart, that it was me. Yes and no. Like I give myself credit and then I give my husband credit. And what I mean by that is when I was working at a couple different agencies back to back as like the account manager, the senior account manager, and then I was a director of business development for one of the agencies where I was helping other agencies who are white labeling our services run their business.
Mm-hmm.
During that spree, it's, when you're teaching people about SEO and PPC and you're seeing all the money that people are making and you have the talent and the skill, I was like, well, hell, I'll make my own website. So I started making like a series of different websites. So I had a bulk candy website called shecandybuffet.com where I would sell bulk candy in different colors. And I remember one of my clients was the Mandalay Bay Resort in Vegas, and they would order big, I mean, tons and tons and tons of gold and white candy. And I would drop ship it from San Diego with my partner out there. And so I had that website, and then I had lawn decor. So it was lucrative lawn decor. A lot of people love their lawn art. So I had a lawn art one, I had a future food storage one. And I mean, it was child's play. Like it made money. It made money enough to go on like a trip to Hawaii with my husband, where then
Mm-hmm.
we got pregnant with our first. Anyways, that's besides the point. But like it was play money.
Yeah.
But where it got real serious was actually when I was on my maternity leave with my oldest, and I was already working on Entrada as their director of marketing products. And my husband came home a couple weeks into my maternity leave, miserable with his job. And I was also feeling the absence of my very close Cuban family with this brand new baby. And I was out in Utah. And so we decided we were going to move to Florida to be near family to support our, the growth of our family and have that Cuban network around us. But I don't think I've ever shared this before. We were going because my husband thought that maybe he would take over my parents' air conditioning business one day, and there was the invitation by my parents, be like, "Here, you can get a taste of entrepreneurship here," because he really wanted it, and I
Mm-hmm.
was kind of supporting him. And then after a couple of months of working with my dad, he's like, "Yeah, this is not a fit
Oh,
for me." But he was still like miserable. He's like, "I really want to
yeah.
do something," and it didn't work out with his dad or my dad or whatever. And it was actually Scott that pressured me, which is a whole story in and of itself. But he pressured me. Now our son was born in February. This is now in June of the same year. I'm now
Mm-hmm.
off my maternity leave, flying to Utah once a month to manage my department and my team. And Scott's pressuring me to start a business with him in case they don't like that I'm working remote, because the CEO at the time hated remote workers.
Mm-hmm.
So we started a marketing agency as the backup. And I did that side hustle while working my corporate job for 3-year overlap and then had another kid in that
Oh
process.
my
It
gosh.
was stupid. Stupid. Don't ever do that.
Talk about hustle.
Yeah. Or stupidity, either one.
I admire it. So, from the time that you graduated, let's take it back just a little bit.
Mhm.
What was your first marketing role?
My first marketing internship, it was an internship, and I was working for a multi-level marketing company. So it was an MLM, which has, they have their reputation.
Yeah.
But we would do conferences for all of their people, and it was in Orlando. We worked and hustled, and we were in the booths, and I mean, events. It's just nuts.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And we would do product releases and product launches, and I would deploy emails, and it was really, really fun. But my first real legit paying marketing job, which was like Rainmaker in training,
Mm-hmm.
was I got picked up by Ancestry.com when I was 20 years old, right when I graduated. And I was the email marketing manager. And I think I got paid $45,000.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've been in a position before where I've been given a role that I'm like, I don't know why I have this role. This is like
Mm-hmm.
big for me at this age. Did you have that feeling at that time, being 20 years old and being given such a
Oh, for sure. And
Yeah.
like ancestry.com is legit. Like
Yeah.
it's a proper office that has multiple floors and departments. And then we had an international office. And then we had half the senior marketing team was in San Francisco. And then when they would fly in, the San Francisco people are here. Like
Oh,
it,
yeah.
it
Mhm.
was, and it was a bullpen and there was like a whole thing. And that's, I mean, probably one of the most organized corporate environments I've ever worked was my first job out the gate. Yep.
Yeah. So how did you manage all of that? Like being so young and being in such a big role, did you have a team of people you had to manage? Did you hold a level of like having to report to the higher ups? Like what kind of
Hmm.
happened with that and how did you navigate that at such a young age?
Yeah, I didn't have any formal direct reports. Actually, I did not. I was an individual contributor. So my job was to
Mhm.
deploy the emails and the email campaigns and all of that stuff. However, my role required the doing of other people who did not report to me nor reported to my boss. So
Mm.
I had to play nice with the coders who would code these like custom emails in HTML. I had to play nice with our dedicated QA team to make sure that we wouldn't send anything out that had like errors and just does those stupid mistakes. I had to work with the marketing team. The other members of the marketing team. I had to work with the creative department who did not report to my boss nor his boss and boss, right? So I remember having a one-on-one. Gosh, you know how like growing up, people call little girls bossy? Well, I definitely got that for sure.
Mhm.
Now here I am in a corporate environment, and what was bossy as a child was no. This is how my boss told me. My Billy DeGroot. Billy told me in a one-on-one, and I was like, "How am I doing?" He's like, "You have this insane ability to get people to do what you want and not hate you, but they still like you and you boss them around." And I'm like, thank you.
Yeah.
Like I'm Ron Burgundy question mark. Like
Yeah.
what? And that's where I learned the power of influence and persuasion. And even the people, like even now when I have contractors, for example, they're not my employees.
Mhm.
And yet there's a way to work with people that they're excited to do things on your behalf or for you and what you're doing. And I learned that at 20.
Yeah, that's an incredibly valuable skill to learn at that age.
Hmm.
That's awesome. It's taking me back to being young and being
Hmm.
in that role. And I was in a corporate environment as well. And I just like, it's an insane feeling. It's really hard to
Hmm.
describe because you're just like, I'm a child compared to all of my 45-year-old and 30-year-old superiors, you know?
Oh yeah.
So after Ancestry, where did your Rainmaker journey take you?
Then it was a sprint of agencies. So I left ancestry.com because it's so crazy. I loved the environment. Like and I still have such an affection and admiration, as you know, because we talk about ancestry.com and some of my curriculum as such a great example. But like, it wasn't that I had an issue with the company. I wasn't even unhappy with my pay, even at 45 or $50,000. Like, I
Hmm.
mean, I was 22 now at this point. Like, it was great.
Right.
I'm making lots of money on my
Right.
own. But I had got so flippin' bored of deploying an email. Like if I have to deploy one more email, I'm gonna scream. Like I remember having to watch like Iron Chef America in like the second monitor just to get through the mechanics of deploying the email because I was so over it.
Yeah.
So I left because I was itchy. Oh, I was a typical older millennial, right? I was itchy.
Hmm.
I got picked up by a marketing agency where I would represent a portfolio of clients. So I felt like I had to become an expert in everybody's different because we didn't serve just chiropractors. We didn't just serve one type of clientele. We served a variety of
Hmm.
business types and business industries, just
Hmm.
all providing, digital marketing services. And so I got to learn about the array, the colors of the business rainbow.
Mm, interesting.
Hmm.
So I know that one of your roles at Entrada.
Oh, that's the big corporate stop. Yep.
So when you got there, I know that you were an account manager. Is that correct?
No, this one scared the out of me. So I was an account manager for a couple different agencies. So it was like Crescendo and then 180 Fusion or whatever.
Hmm.
And then when I left the agency sprint of my career, I got picked up as the director of SEO and PPC for a company called Entrada, which is still in existence
Oh,
today.
okay.
They are a software company for in the multifamily industry. If you rent in the United States, there's a good chance that you pay your rent through their system.
Mm.
And I imposter syndrome with all capital letters. This is where I was like, they made a mistake when they
Mm-hmm.
find out I don't know shit. Like I was like, I couldn't believe I got the job. I could not believe I got the job.
How old were you at that age?
Mid-20s, because I I think it was like 26, 27, 26.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big job. That's a big
Yeah.
job.
And then I had a whole department reporting to me, and they were all like my age. It was this younger group,
Mm-hmm.
and the boss that I was like the manager that I was replacing was like 20 years my elder.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy is now leaving. It's a guy. I'm coming in as a female, and I'm
Right.
the same age, if not maybe even a couple years younger than the other men who are like 28 or 29, and I'm their boss.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. I can relate to that. It's very scary. And yeah, talk about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So, in that time, how were you able to navigate the challenges that came with that? Again, still at a young age, obviously, you've already been through several roles, you've learned, you've grown, you have skills, but it's still a very young age. And to be in a position where you're now someone's boss and all of those people are also close in your age, it can feel it's like it sort of feels like recess when like you name somebody the group leader and you're like, who are you to tell me what to do? Right? You're like
Hmm.
my age or you're my sister or even let's say an employee who's old enough to be your mom
Hmm.
and you're bossing
Hmm.
them around and telling them what to do. And I don't mean bossing them around obviously, but providing
Yeah, we
instruction
are.
and yeah, well, you know what I mean. So how at that time were you able like what support system did you have in your life or how were you able to get through all of that?
That's a really good question. And I just have to kind of sit here and reflect, like, how the hell did I do that? Because I was scared. And then the other thing that I didn't tell anybody was I got the job. We had already booked a trip with my candy money to go to Hawaii. And so me and Scott went to Hawaii before I started my job. And I didn't know I got pregnant.
Mm.
So not only am I starting, so I literally started on Monday, and Friday I took a pregnancy test and it was positive on my first week at Entrada. Uh-huh. Oh, so not only did I have imposter syndrome, like they picked the wrong, wait until they find out I'm knocked up and I
Yeah.
have to take maternity leave in 40
Yeah.
weeks or whatever. Oh my, I didn't tell anybody I was pregnant until I was 6 months pregnant. Just wore some, strategically placed clothing or flowy
Yeah.
clothing, or I mean, it's not that
Yeah.
hard when the company's based in Utah. You wear lots of sweaters until you can't. But oh yeah, I didn't tell anybody for a real long time because I was like, oh, suck. Anyways, that was not the question that you asked. The question that I'm just trying to give like context at, like I was out of nerve. It just all the feelings.
Yeah. I mean, not only that, right? You're a new hire, you're replacing someone who's much older, you're coming into a group of people you don't know.
Uh-huh.
Um,
And I'm
and
knocked
now you're
up.
pregnant and you have pregnancy hormones to play with on top of that. So how did you get through that?
Oh yeah, I was so nauseous. I had to do presentations. That was part of the job. The part of why they hired me is like the guy that I was replacing was really well liked. And even remember Johnny Hanna, which is one of the founders, told me, he's like, you have big shoes to fill. And I'm like, oh, that's not intimidating at all. But he didn't like public speaking and having to like kind of like represent the department and the product. And I really like doing that. So that was kind of my competitive advantage, maybe. And maybe they're just trying to tick the female checkbox. I don't know. Honestly, right here, right now, the first thing that comes to my mind because I didn't know you're going to ask that. And I've never actually really thought about it other than having the love of my spouse and my parent. Okay, all that given. I want to give credit to my boss, Josh Albrechtson, who at the time was the chief customer advocate. I think it was some fancy title. He was a chief, I know that. He met with me and he said, "Look, this department is yours to rebuild from the ground up. In fact, I encourage you to rebuild it from the ground up because half the team had reported the other half of the team to HR. So there was anarchy within the team.
Mm-hmm.
One of the team members had applied for the position that they granted me and not him, and he did not take it well.
Mm-hmm.
And the nature and the integrity of the actual product that we were delivering was being outsourced and farmed out to like the Philippines
Mm-hmm.
and Singapore. And it was getting real sketchy, especially when you're talking about SEO and PPC and like Google, like giving you the hammer and the penalties and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember Josh said, look, you need to rebuild the team. You need to rebuild the product. You have to come up with a commission structure for the new product that you had to make from scratch to incentivize a 40-person sales team because they get commission on every single product that is in the company wheelhouse. you then have to make nice with the entire sales team so that they have the incentive and the desire to sell your thing above the other 40 products that we represent. Like, and he's like, have at it. And I was like, so I know that that probably for the normal person would make everybody just cry and like shrivel up and like, but for me, I think because of my parents creating something from nothing, because of my inherent personality, as all the personality assessments have, outlined, in one way or another, that I'm an overachiever, A plus student, Enneagram 8. I think I thrived in the fact that I didn't have somebody to micromanage me in any way. And
Mm-hmm.
everything that I did, like I would come to him, here's the team changes I want to make. We had the individual team members were doing the fulfillment and the customer service, like the account management. And I wanted to separate the people who provided and fulfilled on the actual product separate from those that would speak to the clients, because those were two different things that I wanted better quality control over, as opposed to one person that controlled both aspects.
Mm-hmm.
And then if that person left, they would go to another account manager and then have a completely different experience, and then would ask for a refund, all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So because I got a blank slate, I thrived. And
Yeah.
every time I would go to Josh with the things I wanted to do, he was like, all right, let's try it. Like I don't remember him once saying, no, I don't think that's a good idea. He's like, all right, he literally said, I don't know anything about what you do. I don't know anything about SEO or PPC. I have no idea what you're talking about with these products. Go for it. That's literally what he said. And it was probably the greatest way that you can manage a personality like me. And
Yeah.
I soared. We went from a department, when I got the department, it was generating about $117,000 a month. And then within the first year, I think within the first year, we were now a $5 to $6 million department.
That's
Mm-hmm.
incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was spectacular. It was really cool.
Yeah, that had to have felt amazing and probably still does today.
Yes, it does
There's
actually.
two things that stood out to me listening to you say that. Number one, right off the bat, the trust that was already granted to
Mm-hmm.
you,
Mm-hmm.
like that's so big and so important. And like you said, had he not approached it that way, you probably would have become really depleted and
Mm-hmm.
defeated and been like, screw this, I don't want to do it, right? Because you're giving me the opportunity to create something and to do what I do best, right? And then crapping all over it the moment I tell you this is what I think is best.
Yes.
I've been there a lot, so I know
Yes, you have.
how awful that can feel. And it's just so important, I think, to receive that trust from your manager or whoever, is
Mm-hmm.
managing you at the time. And for a manager to give it, right? You put that person in a role and then in that position for a reason. So you have to give them that trust until they give you a reason, not to. The second thing that stood out to me is that sounds like that might have been like your this is an awful way to put it, but kind of like your birthing moment.
In more ways than one, symbolically.
Yeah.
Yes.
um like for the woman that it made you, like the
Yes.
abilities that you have now today
Yeah.
to create dream teams and to streamline processes and help companies in all of these ways. That sounds like that job and that whole experience is what gave you the foundation to do what you do today.
I wouldn't be here without Entrada. I worked there for 4 years, and even when I knew it was time to go, because the agency had exploded, we got to about
Mm-hmm.
$700,000 in revenue, and I was still working my corporate job, and I had kids. Like, it was just stupid. Again, stupid. But when I left, I cried and cried in the rental car in the parking lot, and my COO cried, because it was like I have never felt more loved and appreciated by an organization ever. It was, what a way to depart corporate. So when everybody like disses on corporate America, not to say that I didn't have some crappy experiences and even sexual harassment in different,
Mm-hmm.
like that's a whole other podcast for another day. Unfortunately, that was my story too. But at Entrada in particular, I had the best corporate experience of my life. And you're 100% right. I learned how to be the leader that I am there. And I got it wrong. I made people cry and I felt horrific. I was too hard and then I was too soft. And then, like, all of those attributes, if you really think about what it takes to be a leader, it is oxymoronic qualities that intersect each other. You have to be firm and respect the other person enough to be concise and direct, but in a way that they feel loved, and you're doing it to their betterment and not to deflate them. Like, it's crazy how many things are polar attributes are in conflict with each other, but you as a leader have to find the right where they touch, right where they intersect,
Mm-hmm.
and hold that line to be the best leader possible. That's where I learned how to do all of that by doing it wrong and then doing it right and then doing it wrong and then doing it right at Entrada. 100%.
Yep. And there's like no handbook. I mean, you could even
No.
have the best manager, but until you go through those situations and experiences, that's the only way you're going to learn as a manager, I think, and managing people, because you learn to work with different personalities. You
Mm-hmm.
learn who you can be a little harsher with and who you can't, and
Mm-hmm.
who you have to kind of, dance around it. And so it's hard, and there is no handbook. And when I think back on my own experiences managing, I used to get so frustrated, and I would be like, why wasn't this person doing this for me? Or why, as far as my managers, why weren't they doing this for me? And I'm glad they didn't. When I look back now, I'm glad they didn't, because it allowed me the space and the freedom to learn in my own way. And, I don't have to have this, I don't get to have to look back and go, well, they told me how to do that, and that's why I did it that way. I did it because it's what I thought was best in the moment. And I had to learn, whether my intuition was right or wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that was really painful. So I totally get that resonates with me in a big way.
We'll be back with this interview right after the commercial break. Did you know that I have a free Rainmaker hiring kit? Skip the formal recruiting process and learn how to source Rainmaker applicants that are already connected to you. I'll show you how to turn a walking testimonial into a rockstar team member for free. Head to veronicarami.com or click the link in my show notes to get your hands on the free Rainmaker hiring kit. Now let's get back to the show.
So after Entrada, where did you go next? So you already have 2 kids at this point, right? You already have 2 little babies.
Yeah.
You're still living in Florida.
Still living in Florida. Yep.
So what came for you after Entrada?
Well, then it's my visionary story, right? So then we're now running the agency. I then ran that for a couple years and then sold the agency summer 2019.
And this is the agency you and Scott built together.
Yes.
What was it called?
Oh god, that's embarrassing. No. It still is technically, my company name is still that original LLC, and now I just have like doing business as
Your
DBAs.
DBA, yeah.
Yep. But it's LOSOMO, stands for Local Social Mobile.
I like that.
So cheesy.
I love that. I'm going to change your name in my phone to that.
Stop, don't. Oh gosh, that makes me like blush, because then there was a whole bunch of other companies that were like Somolo, Lomoso.
Oh no. I love
That's
that.
funny. Sold the agency summer 2019, went all in on speaking life and hitting the road and being one of those road warriors where I'd get, $7,500 a keynote, and then I'd make money when I got home by selling the audience on an online course and make another chunk of change. That's where I became the Tony Robbins speaker with Dean Graziosi, and that's where I met Pete Vargas. And then the world collapsed, as we all know, in March 2020. And that's when I went back to my Rainmaker story, because that's where I worked for Pete Vargas for a hot 45 days. And that's where I met Adrian, and that's where I met you. And that's where our stories started to collide. Right there was when I worked for Pete.
Incredible. So this was 2020, 2019?
2019, I was still in my visionary story, and then March 2020 is where the Rainmaker story picks back up again because of the pandemic, because I make the decision for myself, my family, to kind of go back to working for somebody else.
Mm-hmm. And so when you were with Pete, what was your role there?
I was over their marketing department. I was a
Mm.
Rainmaker. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then from Pete, where did you head to next?
Then I left Advance Your Reach not too shortly after, for what, I don't even know what you're going to ask me there, and then I went back to my visionary story where I started doing everything that I was doing on stage now virtually, because I figured out the mechanics finally to do that in virtual workshops and virtual speaking opportunities and virtual products and info products, and that was going super, super well.
Mm-hmm.
And then BossBabe happened at the end of 2020, and then I started January 2021 as chief of staff.
So you wear many hats.
Back into Rainmaker. Mm-hmm.
You've worn many, many hats.
Well, I think just even sitting here talking to you, the ping pong between my visionary story and my Rainmaker story was like literally it was one of those ping pong machines between the world collapsing March 2020
Mm-hmm.
and then June of 2021 is where it went back and forth between visionary Rainmaker before done. Right now, I'm only in the visionary seat and have been for over a year.
And do you think, based on what you know about yourself, that you're going to get that itch to be in a Rainmaker role again?
I'll be honest. I really, really, at my heart of hearts, still very much identify as a Rainmaker. I'm sure you guys feel that inside the Rainmaker Residency.
Totally.
Like
Yeah.
it will forever be me. It is my DNA. I wear it like a proud badge of honor. And I just last week was at my first funnel hacking live event, and Russell Brunson from the stage asked the room, "How many of you are the CEO, the dreamer, the visionary?" Is basically what he was asking, and like
Mm-hmm.
huge noise. Wow, you know how it is, right? It's just massive, this event. How many? And then he goes, "How many of you are inside the company, the operator, the delegator, the executioner?" Right? And then the same volume of people. So it was like pretty much split of an attendance of 5,000 people. And when he asked the question about how many of you are behind the scenes operating, delegating, and I wanted to scream, which is so crazy. So and it's not that I'm fractured on the inside. I don't have double personality here. It's all of me. But it's probably why the Rainmaker Residency is as successful as it is, because I know what it is to be both.
Yeah.
I know exactly what it is to be the visionary CEO and to have people leave me and to manage and all that. And then I also know what it is to be a Rainmaker who is either put in a position to thrive, like I was at Entrada, and to be put in a position where I couldn't do and be me and the magic of me, where I had to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when you were working at BossBabe, what was your role there?
I was chief of staff. On paper, it was certainly internally communicated that I was the integrator. I didn't know when they hired me, because when Natalie and Danielle hired me, they told me that I would be mostly working with just Danielle. Me and Danielle were going to be like two peas in a pod, and I was going to be working with her a ton,
Mm-hmm.
more her than I was even with Natalie. In fact, when I first started, I really didn't work with Natalie at all. I was over the operations department and more of that integrator capacity than I was even the Rainmaker capacity. It wasn't until we had so much turnover in the
Mm-hmm.
marketing, that Rainmaker seat, like I'm talking really, really bad turnover in succession within like just a couple months of even my employment,
Mm-hmm.
where I Hunger Games it. I like volunteered myself as tribute to take it over, as opposed to giving it to yet again the wrong person.
Mm-hmm.
And then I switched over to the Rainmaker and kind of stayed in that position. And half of me was still chief of staff integrator
Mm-hmm.
until I left.
Mm-hmm. And so what were some of the things that you did there for their team as the chief of staff?
When I first got there, a lot of it was like a restructure. I remember even in the big, like our big all hands on team meetings, it was like I initiated this Boss Babe 1.0 to 2.0 movement, like, because I really wanted everybody to be behind. We were going to elevate the company. The company had gotten to a certain position in revenue. I mean, quite frankly, organically, it was insane how well they have done
Mm-hmm.
without even cracking the cold traffic part. Where some empires are built off the back of cold traffic, they were
Mm-hmm.
not. Those viral pink quotes took them really freaking far, and it
Yeah.
was $1 million business in a very short time frame because of it. And so they had gotten to this huge position and this exposure level and in some crazy rooms and contacts because of this organic swell. And so when I got there, the ambition was high. It still is. Like even when I left, and I would imagine it still is to this day, but ambition was high. There's so much potential. We're only scratching the surface, low hanging fruit. So I was coming in to structure the company in a way to double where we were at. Like we were
Mm-hmm.
getting real ambitious, and they needed desperate lanes in this highway because everybody was flying down this highway and there was no lanes, and it was very bumper carty and hard.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, that's the initial.
Yeah. You sort of came in and did what you did at Entrada and just kind of
Yes.
created a
Yeah.
strategy and changed the game.
Yes.
Yeah.
And everybody was on board. Gosh, the company culture, we were adding new people. We had to say goodbye to some people. Like everything got elevated. It's like that story of like once that runner hit a 4-minute mile and showed the world that you could even do a 4-minute mile, now everybody's running 4-minute miles and that's the new standard. That
Mhm.
was the vibe. The vibe was like 1.0 to 2.0, new team meeting structure, new departments. Every department had its own team name. So when I was running the operations department, we called ourselves Mamacitas, and it was like a whole vibe. And we had the Mamacitas folder and Slack channel,
I love
you
that.
know. Like it was so fun, and I was trying to like rid people of their Frankenstein roles. There was a ton of Frankenstein roles where everybody was doing a little bit of everything all over the place. And when you're that big of a company, it can be really catastrophic and it can lead to some really bad turnover of good people, which is really unfortunate when that happens, right? But yeah, I came in and started to put some serious lanes in the highway before having to shift my focus to the marketing department.
Yeah. And so what does that do for you? Like how does that fill your what fills your cup more, I guess, as a rainmaker and as a visionary? What fills your cup completely?
Okay, so I've had personal friends ask me, like, Veronica, like, I know that you're a visionary. Why the hell would you go back to working for any? Like, I remember when I told people that I was working, especially after I left working for Pete, and then went back to my visionary thing, like, okay, here we go. And so when I told everybody I was working for BossBabe, there a lot of my very close friends that have known me for a while were like, why?
Mhm.
Like, you're having success as a C. Like, why would you go? And I remember even sharing this with Natalie and Danielle because Natalie very, very, very frankly told me in our interview, I don't like hiring entrepreneurs. And I was like, oh, all right. I'll never forget. I reminded her, I'm like, do you remember when you said that to me? She's like, oh, I did. I'm like, yeah, you did. So like, I know they were looking at me like, why the hell would we consider you? You're just going to leave us kind of thing.
Mhm.
But it's the honest to goodness answer. Yeah, I was nailing it as a CEO, but I was lonely as hell. And that's something that is not talked about too often, I think, in the online space because you have the luxury of that laptop life and working from your house. Like this podcast is being recorded in my home, right?
Yeah.
All is good and well, but I was used to working at a corporation that had hundreds of employees where I could walk the halls and be like, hey, V, hey. I
Yeah.
was used to managing a big team. I was used to managing massive budgets. I was used to being a gladiator in the Coliseum, not a solopreneur in the cockfight in my backyard. And like that's how it felt. It was just like scrappy and lonely. And I mean there's some beauty in that kind of grind and hustle, but I was desperately missing a team. I was missing companionship and like a work environment, a work relationship. And I think what was so exciting about Boss Babe, one, I mean, I'm all about their brand's kind of promise, which is like empowering unapologetically ambitious women. Hello, like I'm an ambitious woman who's unapologetic, so like that spoke to me, that ethos,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But the fact that you're like you get to be the chief of staff, all of the babies are your babies, and you get to be the mother hen. And I was like, give me the babies. I
Yeah.
want all the babies. I couldn't have been happier. I literally couldn't have been happier. It was bliss.
Yeah. It sounds like it like listening to you talk and say those things like for me at least my personality type like I would thrive. Like that's what I want.
Yeah.
I love opportunities like that and as intimidating as they probably can be to some degree,
Mhm.
right? We all suffer from a little bit of that imposter syndrome of like can I freaking do this? Like
Mhm.
can
Mhm.
I? Should I? Why me? I know deep down and I'm sure you do like this is my shit.
Yes. And I know some people hate managing other people. I'm the freak that doesn't. I love managing people. I love working with young professionals of both genders, but I genuinely love seeing someone who doesn't believe in themselves start to believe in themselves because of your nurturing. Like me pouring into that flower pot and watching them be the best cilantro they can be, or in my case, cactus, the best cactus they can be. It's like the most gratifying, life fulfilling, like I don't aspire for X amount of dollars. I aspire to just influence. Like I have it on my mirror, like God bless me that I can provide for those that I'm called to serve. Like, and that could be 5 people, that can be 50 people, that can be however many I'm meant to. But man, there's nothing for me that gives me more satisfaction, gratification, and fulfillment than seeing Alysha stand taller in her own power.
You're gonna make me cry.
Well, it's true, and you know it.
Yeah, I have been so impacted in such an incredible way by one knowing you and two being a part of the Rainmaker Residency. It is an incredible program and the people in there. just make me want to be a better rainmaker and even a better person. Like some of the conversations that happen in there just make me they're very deep and they make me think about a lot of things. I was also in a corporate environment and I know what you mean about missing and I've been feeling that a lot I think since the pandemic and kind of reopening, right? Like we've all become so comfortable being little hermits and being in our home. And I miss that. I miss just like walking down the hall. Like, how was your morning going and getting my coffee and, having those like memories, that you get to make together and getting to meet people and meet their kids and, all the things. Like, I miss that so deeply. And I think I've tried to convince myself for a long time, like, no, you don't. You don't miss that. You're fine being a hermit crab, but it is. And I was literally just telling Adrian this the other day, like, I am not the hermit that I think I keep trying to convince myself I am. I'm not
Yep.
the introvert that I keep trying to convince myself I am. I love talking to people. Like I will talk all day. I was telling my fiance yesterday, I was like, my dad was telling me a story about how when we were kids, we'd go on road trips or whatever, and my mom and my brother would be the first ones asleep, and I would be in the back seat talking the whole time
Hmm.
and talking his ear off. And I'm like, I don't know why I keep trying to convince myself that that's not who I am because it is. I'm not this like comfortable hermit crab. I love engaging with people, and I think being in the Rainmaker Residency has like made me find that again in myself, and it's totally encouraged me and motivated me to be more engaging and be more social. And being able to do that with other rainmakers who are
Yeah.
going through the same thing you're going through and you can share stories with and share like the pains of launches with and all the things is incredible, and it's provided such an amazing community. So I love it.
Yeah, because and I know that even when you are in a corporate environment and you can say hi to Joe, at the water cooler, that you can still feel lonely in a corporate environment. You can
Totally.
still feel lonely in a job, and especially as a rainmaker because the weight is so heavy and the pressure is so high because you literally make it rain. You have to generate revenue for the company. It's such a critical component of this function, this role at the highest levels, especially. And so it was important to me that there's parts of the Rainmaker residency that it's just you guys.
Hmm.
The visionary CEO is not with you. It's just you guys because I know what it was to be a rainmaker for some of these organizations and feel even inside of the walls of a company alone and lonely. And I didn't want that for you guys. And it's the only place that I know of that I've congregated these rainmakers together. So it's like it's your people and you don't have to feel lonely even in the work for another person.
Yeah, and like let's be clear that that lonely feeling doesn't necessarily mean like job unhappiness, right? Like it doesn't
Right.
mean I'm miserable in my job or that I hate my work. It just, it's like that little portion of my cup just needs to get filled, in some way. And so it's not to say that I am unhappy. Even when I think back to being in an office, I think back to then and I'm like, yeah, while I might have had all of that personal interaction every day, I was miserable there. I was
Hmm.
unhappy. And I saw a
Hmm.
picture of myself the other day from when I was working there, and I just like got so choked up because I was like, look how unhappy I look.
Mm,
Like I can just see it in my eyes, I can see it in my face, my posture, like I just look so unhappy and compared
yeah,
to, now, and I'm like, well, I might have to, be a little lonely sometimes and a little isolated. I wouldn't trade
sure.
what I do now for anything. I would never want to go back to being that unhappy. So, yeah. For me, I don't know when I started to love marketing. There's not a moment, but being in the Rainmaker residency just makes me fall in love with marketing more and more
So
and
fun.
more. Yes.
Yeah, man. It's just marketing it's just it's the greatest and especially ethically, right? The ethical art of persuading somebody to take a choice, a chance on themselves is so it's addicting. It's amazing. And you are an elite. I don't have favorites. It's like my children. I can't have favorites. However, you are you are literally in the Top Gun class. Let's just put it that way.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and I want to speak to that real quick about the Rainmaker residency. I was in the beta program, and when it was first brought to me, I was really scared about that. I was like, we want to have this raw kind of journey together where we become, a dynamic duo, but there are like these hard moments of like I just have to get something off my chest or I have questions and I don't want to have this conversation with my visionary, or not even that you don't want to have it with him or her, but like it's just like you need that safe space to like, talk. And the
Yeah.
fact that you provide that and you do have that rainmaker only space. And I'm even sure for the visionaries, right? Like
Yep,
they're
they have
running
their
an
own.
entire business. They have so much on their plate that they
Yep.
probably need to get off their chest that they don't want to bother their rainmaker with. So the fact that you provide these safe spaces, I agree. I have not seen anything else like it out there, and it's just absolutely incredible.
Because of people like you, but go ahead.
No. So I want to know where the idea for you going back to your visionary role and going back to running your own business and then starting the Rainmaker Residency, where did that idea come from?
Man, I wish I could say it was mine. It wasn't. I'm really good. I'm really good at solving or filling. I'm really good at execution. Let's just put it this way, right? Like I pride myself on the speed of in which I can execute. It's just something that I go fast. And so it was actually two paths came together at the same time that birthed this thing. So when I left BossBabe, I went straight into consulting work, and instead of being exclusively the chief of staff at BossBabe, I was now the fractional chief of staff for private clients.
Mm-hmm.
And in restructuring their organizations, it was so easy to find operators and customer centric roles. And man, was it flippin' impossible to find marketing leaders. There was marketing doers, right? Lots of specialists and doers, and there's a lot of certifications and skills and courses to teach a skill. So there was lots of doers that you could pick from, but there wasn't marketing leaders to hold the marketing doers accountable so that the CEO or my client didn't have to step in as like almost the CMO to that department.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it was really frustrating because then it was frustrating for me on a personal level because then they would look at me like, well, you're really good at that. I'm like, no. I'm just your chief of staff. I already did this. I was already chief of staff at BossBabe, and then I had to become the Rainmaker too. Like to hold both roles was flipping nuts. But
Mm-hmm.
in my private consulting work, in the absence of a Rainmaker, they would look to me knowing that I could do it. It's like, if you know I can lay a golden egg, you're going to come and say, can you please lay me a golden egg? That's what my husband
Right.
says. Like, stop telling them that you can lay a golden egg. Pretend like you don't know anything about marketing. I'm like, I can't. It's my
Yeah.
identity. How dare you suggest otherwise? Like, what? I can't turn off my marketing nerd. So that was starting to become like really, really frustrating. Even my one of the last private chief of staff clients that I had, the launch was just in disarray, and they did have a Rainmaker and everything. And it was just like, and I remember the CEO in her frustration looked at me. She's like, well, I thought you were going to take the reins and become the CMO. And I'm like, that's nowhere in my agreement. But she had in her head and was really upset that I didn't. And I'm like, and again, it goes back to like, well, if you have it, why can't you share it? And then they get mad at me. So that was happening in my private client work, which is really fascinating. And then at the same time, I went to a mastermind, and one of my friends, Josh, who's a CEO, was struggling not having a Rainmaker. Again, he didn't call it Rainmaker. He's like, he was trying to recruit for a marketing leader with a traditional recruiter. And he's like, the candidates suck. I'm like, they don't suck. They're just lacking development. Like there's some really amazing people. They just haven't been given the opportunity or the runway, or they don't have their sea legs when it comes to leadership. They have an affection for marketing. They just don't have people management training yet, because who gives you that anyways in corporate, blah, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like, but he was getting a lot of people that just weren't fitting the bill. And I'm like, it's not hard, Josh. You have to develop this person yourself. He's like, I don't have capacity for that. You do it. And then the idea was birthed.
And you were like, okay, I will.
100. Oh, you're going to challenge an
Yeah.
Enneagram 8?
Yeah.
Okay. Just get out of the way. Like, checkmate, biatch. Like,
Yeah.
100%. Like, absolutely. Right. So, and he knows this story and everything. If you download my catalog, I talk about this story in Disney World. And so he gets a lot of credit for this. But he was like the crescendo of this frustration that I was feeling in my private client work.
Mm-hmm.
And he just lit the effing match. How about that? Like
Mm-hmm.
I was getting some matches along the way, and then he was like, here's some fire. And then that happened in November. The beta program launched in January. That's how quickly it came out. But you know what's interesting? Creating the syllabus, creating the material, creating the curriculum, like it flowed the freak out of me. It's probably the fastest thing that just literally came out of my body. Like, I'm not going to use a child analogy because that's gross, but like, the big leap, if you've ever read that book from Gay Hendricks, where he talks about like when you're working in your zone of genius, it's like Einstein time, like everything just it's just different. It's a different current. It doesn't have as much friction or rocks.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what I experienced. It just literally shot out of me like a Care Bear. Again, I don't know why I said
Incredible.
that.
I know exactly what you mean. No, I don't. Yeah, and it's just crazy how life works, right? Like how things just happen. And I'm sure, like, if you can even take yourself back to like thinking about even going on that trip,
Yeah.
it's like, had you not gone, you would not be we would not be sitting here today.
Uh-huh.
you know
Uh-huh. Yep.
so it's just so crazy, like the routes that life can take you and the things that can come from that.
Yeah. But I was listening too, right? Like, because I would imagine that this happens to all of us. Like, you can get some of the greatest ideas in a library and the gas station. Like, I feel like
Hmm.
there's phenomenal ideas all around us. But if your vessel is closed, it doesn't even matter. And so maybe even the Rainmaker Residency could have been born 3 years ago. It did, but I wasn't
Hmm.
open because I was dealing with my own internal crap, saying I wasn't a visionary. I'm not a visionary. I'm not a vision. Right. So many things,
Yeah.
internal dialogue, external circumstances, all really came together. I mean, had I not worked for Boss Babe and been the Rainmaker for Boss Babe, I don't even think that the Rainmaker Residency would have been a 2-person program, because that's really the environment where I'm like, it is so effing critical to have the CEO involved, because the CEO will sabotage their own Rainmaker if not careful or aware. And so, like, even how the Rainmaker Residency is structured was deeply, deeply influenced when and why I worked for Pete Vargas and for Boss Babe. So that had to happen too.
Hmm. If you could tell your 20-year-old self, or let's just say at any point in your time up until now, if you could talk to your younger self, your Rainmaker self, and give her one piece of advice, what would it be?
Such a good one. You're really, P.S., you're like scary good at this. Just a F, like, damn, Alysha, you're really good at this. I think that's a solid question, because I wouldn't want to take away the adversity, because it's like in the adversity
Right.
is where I got refined, and in the refinement is where I shined, right? Like, I
Hmm.
wouldn't want to,
Hmm.
I wouldn't want my present self to remove obstacles from my, former self, because they were so necessary. I probably honestly would just remind myself to be kinder, because especially with the kids, I've really, really beat myself up of being a crappy mother, or at least feeling like I could have done more as a mother in this journey. Pursuing your own individual path and reaching your highest self, and like doing amazing things in the world, but also raising great kids. I think I would just tell myself that, like, family will still, your family will be okay. Like, if I could give myself peace, it would be like, your kids will love you at 10 years from now. So stop beating the hell out of yourself now. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And what do you hope that your kids, like, when they look back at their mom and they see everything that you've done, like, what is the one thing you hope that they take away or that they can?
Okay, now you're gonna make me cry. Hold on. Okay, you can see it on the camera, right? So it says, by Miles, which is my oldest, who is a force. By Miles to Mom. Says, he wrote this to me like a couple weeks ago. I love you, Mom. I believe you. I trust you. I love you over the moon, Mom.
Oh my gosh, that is so sweet. I believe you. That's
I believe you. I trust you.
what a profound thing for a kid to say.
Yeah. Yeah. He also asked me how he can make $100 in 20 minutes. He's like, Mom, you do it. Like, can I? I'm like, well, hold on. So this kid.
Okay, so we know where whose personality he got.
Oh, yeah. That walking little being is me for sure. but but my son, both my boys, I have 2 boys, they see how hard Mom works, and they know it, because like, Mommy works really hard. Like, even when we went to Costa Rica to celebrate my parents' retirement, on their own accord, they said and verbalized, at one point, they're like, yeah, we're in Costa Rica because Mommy and Daddy work so hard.
Ugh.
So, like, yeah, yes, I'm proud. I've worked really hard on that part of my life to not have so much guilt, and I've even worked with a parenting coach that I couldn't recommend more. Like, I've done really good work in that category.
Mhm.
But I would like to think that my kids are getting a really good example by both genders, by both parents, of, and even their grandparents, if we're taking it back to the beginning of the podcast, like, of what hard work can really achieve in life, as an example for them.
Yeah. Well, it seems like they already can recognize that at an incredibly young age, because for your kids to validate what you do every day
Yeah.
and recognize that is huge and not just go, oh, look, we're in Costa Rica.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
I like
yeah.
indoctrinate them. I tell them every day, I'm like, mommy's your best friend. Mommy's your best friend.
You need me. Do you ever watch The Goldbergs? Do you ever
Oh,
watch that
such
show?
a funny show. Yeah.
Bev? Are you a Bev? We love the mom on that show.
Alysha, thank you for, again, you're wicked good at this. FYI, we're gonna do this.
Thank
I have
you.
a feeling that people are gonna love this format, and you're gonna come back again. I already know. So just
Oh, I'd be honored.
you're gonna get the call. I'm just gonna tell you right now. So thank you. You've asked me questions. One, I've never been asked. Two, I've never spoken about some of the things I spoke about on this podcast because why would I, right? And it's odd to bring up some of those things. So thank you. The version of this story is as great as it is because of you and you alone. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Again, I'm so honored that you asked me to do this. And yes, if we need to come back for a part
Yes.
2 and really get into the weeds and the emotions and all the things,
Well,
I will be there.
listen, sister, next time it's your story. So prepare your heart.
We're going to need an hour
Yeah.
and like a box of tissues.
Some therapy.
Yeah.
I love you. Thank you. And thank you for letting me tell my story on today's Rainmaker podcast.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Rainmaker podcast. We believe you can't get real results or have real relationships that last without being real first. If you resonated with today's episode, leave us a review so we can keep serving up the truth and tips that help you become the empowered leader that I know that you are. And always head over to veronicarami.com to check out all the free resources I have for you and the show notes from this episode. Until next time, my friends.